The desert moon of Ravel 9 was a silent place, a world of gold sand, long shadows, and lonely winds. Most travelers avoided it because the heat was cruel and the nights were colder than ice. But one man walked across it without fear. His name was Ethan Ward, a former soldier from Earth, a man who came here to escape war, noise, and people. He only wanted peace, nothing more. That morning, the sun rose like a giant burning coin in the sky. Ethan walked along the long desert road, drinking water slowly as the heat shimmered in front of him. Everything was quiet, almost too quiet. No birds, no machines, no travelers, just endless sand and the soft crunch of his boots. Then he heard it, a strange metallic sound far away, echoing through the dunes like a scream mixed with an engine. At first, Ethan thought it was the wind playing tricks, but as he listened again, the sound grew sharper, louder, and more painful to hear. It wasn't the wind. It was a cry, a real cry, thin, cracking, full of fear. Ethan stopped walking, his eyes narrowing as the wind pushed hot air across his face. In the distance, he saw something moving through the sand. A hover transport flying low, dragging something behind it. Something small. Something alive. The cry came again. This time it cut straight into Ethan's chest. He felt his heartbeat change. Old instincts from his soldier days returned. Instincts he tried to bury long ago. But now they rose again, sharp and cold. He walked faster, then faster, until he was almost running. As the hover transport came closer, Ethan finally saw what they were dragging. It wasn't a bag. It wasn't a machine. It was a girl, a small alien girl with silver skin that shone in the sun. Her arms were scraped, her legs covered in cuts, and her body bounced painfully across the rough sand. Each bump pulled a weak cry from her dry throat. Ethan felt anger burn through him like fire. The hover transport slowed when the crew noticed him standing in the middle of the road. 3 mercenaries in desert armor laughed inside the open cockpit. They were big, rough men, their faces hidden behind sand goggles and dust masks. One of them shouted, "Move, human, unless you want to be next." But Ethan did not move. He looked at the rope tied to the girl's ankles. He looked at her face, pale and shaking. He looked at the mercenaries who felt proud of their cruelty. Then he stepped forward, placing himself directly in their path. The sun behind him made his shadow stretch long across the sand. The mercenaries slowed, confused by his calm expression. "Are you deaf?" shouted one. "Move," yelled another, raising a shock rifle toward Ethan. But Ethan did not flinch, didn't blink, didn't step aside. He spoke with a voice quiet, but sharper than a knife. He said, "Let her go, or you will not go another mile." The 3 mercenaries exchanged looks, then burst into loud laughter. To them, Ethan was just a traveler with a backpack, just one human alone in the desert. Nothing dangerous, nothing serious. But they were wrong, dead wrong. Ethan slowly removed his backpack and placed it on the sand. The desert wind blew harder now, swirling dust around his boots. For a moment, everything went silent. Then one mercenary stepped out of the hover with a smug smile, holding a shock baton. He walked toward Ethan like a predator playing with its prey. He said, "You want to be a hero? Fine, let us show you how heroes die on this moon." The mercenary lifted the baton to hit him. But Ethan moved, not slowly, not normally. He moved with the speed of a trained Earth soldier. His hand shot forward, grabbed the mercenary's wrist, twisted it, and slammed him to the sand in one clean motion. The baton fell from his hand and rolled across the ground. The other 2 mercenaries stared in shock. "Dirthworlder?" one whispered. The word spread fear among alien criminals. Humans came from a world full of danger, storms, predators, and constant survival. To the rest of the galaxy, humans were monsters of strength, instinct, and stubborn will. And Ethan Ward looked like one of those monsters right now. Ethan took out a small knife from his boot and walked toward the alien girl. She looked barely conscious, her breathing shallow. He cut the rope from her ankles gently, speaking softly. "You're safe now," he whispered. But the girl managed to whisper back one weak word. "Mother." Ethan felt a deeper chill at her voice. She wasn't just a victim.
She was trying to protect someone else too. Someone important. Someone in danger. The mercenaries aimed their rifles at him. Sand blew harder, the sky growing darker as a storm approached from the west. Ethan slowly stood up, shielding the girl with his body. He looked at the mercenaries with eyes like steel. He said, "If you want her, you go through me first." The wind roared, the storm crawled closer. The desert held its breath, and the longest fight of Ethan Ward's life was about to begin.
The wind grew stronger around Ethan as he stood between the mercenaries and the wounded alien girl. Sand whipped across his boots, stinging his skin, carrying the smell of a coming storm. The mercenaries tightened their grips on their rifles, suddenly aware this wasn't just a desert traveler. This was a human from Earth, a Death Worlder, and that changed everything. The leader of the three, a tall man with rust-colored armor, stepped forward and pointed his rifle directly at Ethan's chest. His voice was cold and sharp. "Human, step away from the girl. She is property. She belongs to our employer." Ethan felt anger rise in his throat like fire. "No child belongs to anyone," he replied quietly, his voice steady as stone. The mercenaries exchanged uneasy glances. None of them expected resistance in the middle of nowhere, especially not from a single man. But Ethan stood still, his body relaxed, yet ready like a coiled spring. The tall mercenary took one step closer. "She is not just a runaway," he growled. "She is a bounty, a valuable one. We drag her to show others what happens when they resist." Ethan's jaw tightened. He slowly lowered his hand to his knife, hidden by his leg. A tiny move the mercenaries didn't notice. The alien girl, still lying on the sand, tried to lift her head. Her silver skin shimmered faintly in the sun. Her voice was weak, full of pain. "Please don't hurt him," she whispered. Ethan looked down at her, his expression softening for a moment. "Don't worry," he said quietly. "They won't touch me." The dust storm behind them rolled closer, darkening the sky like a giant wall. Ethan knew he only had minutes before it hit. He had to end this fast. The mercenary leader raised his rifle higher, preparing to shoot. "Last chance, human," he warned. "Step aside." Ethan didn't move. He didn't blink. He didn't speak. He simply stared back at the man with cold, sharp eyes. The second mercenary, a shorter man with a heavy breathing mask, grew impatient. He lifted his shock rifle and fired a warning shot near Ethan's foot. The sand exploded upward, spraying Ethan's leg with burning fragments. Still, Ethan didn't react. The mercenary swallowed nervously. He had seen fearless men before, but never someone like this. Then the leader shouted, "Take him down." The three mercenaries aimed their weapons together. The first one pulled the trigger, but Ethan moved before the weapon fired. He charged forward with sudden explosive speed. The leader shot but missed as Ethan dropped low, rolling across the sand. He grabbed a handful of sand and threw it upward into the leader's mask. The man screamed, blinded for a moment. Ethan rose swiftly and punched him hard in the throat. The leader fell backward, choking and gasping for air. The second mercenary fired, but the storm wind pushed his aim off. The bullet grazed Ethan's shoulder, cutting a line of blood. Ethan didn't feel it. Adrenaline drowned the pain. He kicked the rifle from the mercenary's hands and slammed his elbow into the man's jaw. The mercenary collapsed instantly, rolling across the sand. The third mercenary stumbled backward, terrified now. "No! No! This isn't worth it!" he shouted, firing wildly, missing every shot. Ethan sprinted at him, the wind roaring in his ears. He grabbed the man's rifle, twisted it away, and knocked him flat with one brutal strike. Within seconds, all three mercenaries were down, coughing, groaning, or unconscious. Ethan breathed heavily, sand sticking to his sweat. The storm clouds above rumbled like anger from the sky. He knew more mercenaries might be coming. He didn't have long.
Ethan knelt beside the alien girl and gently lifted her into his arms. She felt light, too light, her body weak from pain and dehydration. Her silver skin glowed faintly, dimmer than before. Ethan brushed sand from her hair. "What's your name?" he asked softly. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice shaking. "My name is Lyra." Ethan nodded. "Lyra, I'm going to take you somewhere safe." Her small hand weakly gripped his shirt. "My mother," she whispered. They took her. They will kill her." Ethan felt a hard chill move through him. This wasn't over. Not even close. He carried Lyra to the side of the road where the sand dipped into a shallow trench. The sky darkened fast, the storm almost on top of them now. He needed shelter before the storm ripped the desert apart. He scanned the horizon and found what he needed, an abandoned maintenance station, half buried in sand. He ran towards it, fighting the rising wind. Sand cut his face like blades, the air becoming harder to breathe. Behind him, he heard engines roaring again. More mercenaries, approaching. A lot more. Ethan gritted his teeth. He carried Lyra tighter, and he whispered to himself, "No matter who comes, they will not take her." He reached the old station door and kicked it open, dust pouring down like snow. Inside, it was dark but safe. Ethan laid Lyra gently on a metal table and checked her breathing. She was alive, but barely. Outside, the sound of hoverbikes grew louder, dozens of them. The mercenary reinforcements had arrived. Ethan wiped blood from his shoulder, picked up a fallen rifle, and stared at the doorway. His voice was calm, steady, unshaken. He whispered, "They want her. Then they can come through me." And the storm howled like a warning across the dying desert.
Inside the abandoned maintenance station, Ethan stood silently beside the doorway. The storm outside roared louder, shaking the metal walls like a living creature. Dust fell from the ceiling with every gust. Lyra lay on the table behind him, breathing weakly, her silver skin losing its light. Ethan knew she didn't have much time, but he also knew he wasn't alone anymore. The distant hum of engines grew sharper. Hoverbikes, many of them, cutting through the rising storm winds. Ethan clenched his jaw as he checked the stolen rifle in his hands. He didn't want to fight. He didn't want blood, but he would not let anyone take Lyra again. A sudden explosion of sand outside announced the arrival of the mercenaries. Shadows moved behind the blowing dust. Figures stepped off their hoverbikes wearing heavy armor and glowing visors. There were at least 12 of them, maybe more. Ethan took a deep breath, steady and calm. He whispered quietly, "Stay strong, Lyra." The first mercenary approached the station door, shouting through the storm, "Human, step outside and hand over the girl, and maybe we let you live." Ethan didn't answer. He waited, still as stone. The mercenary pushed the door open, sand blasting inside. He stepped forward, and Ethan struck. With a quick movement, Ethan slammed the rifle into the man's helmet. The mercenary fell backward into the sand, dazed and coughing. Chaos erupted instantly. Two more mercenaries rushed the door, firing blindly into the dark room. Bullets hit the walls, sending sparks flying. Ethan ducked low behind a metal crate. He aimed and fired once, hitting the first attacker's leg. The man screamed and collapsed. The second mercenary lunged forward with a blade. Ethan grabbed his wrist, twisted hard, and knocked him unconscious with a single blow. Outside, the others shouted orders. "Push in! Don't let the human escape! Get the girl alive!" Ethan's eyes narrowed. Alive? Why alive? Why did they want a young alien girl so badly? This wasn't random cruelty. It was something bigger. He grabbed the fallen mercenary's mask and quickly powered it on. A small hologram screen flickered to life on the side. Ethan's eyes widened at what he saw. A wanted notice. A bounty order. A picture of Lyra, but not just her. Another picture beside hers. A tall alien woman with brighter silver skin, glowing markings and deep blue eyes.
The title under her name read, Queen Solara, High Healer of the Thireen. Capture alive, 22,000 credits. Kill on arrival, 50,000 credits. Ethan's heart tightened. Lyra wasn't a random victim. She wasn't a runaway child. She was the daughter of the Thireen Queen, the last healer capable of restoring dying planets. Without her, whole regions of the galaxy would fall into sickness and drought. Lyra whispered weakly behind him, her voice trembling, barely audible. They want my mother. They want her power. They want me so she cannot fight back. Tears shone in her eyes. My people are dying. Only my mother can heal them, and only I can reach her. Ethan turned toward her, his voice softer than the storm outside. I won't let them stop you. Lyra reached for his arm weakly. You are human. You don't have to help. You owe us nothing. Ethan shook his head. No child deserves this. No mother deserves this. And no monster gets to decide who lives or dies. Before he could say more, a heavy thud shook the door. A new voice echoed through the storm, deep, metallic, and full of confidence. Human, it called. You have made this more difficult than expected. Ethan's breath slowed. This wasn't an ordinary mercenary. The voice carried authority, control, and something worse, pleasure in violence. The door blew open with incredible force. A tall figure stepped inside, armored from head to toe in black plating with glowing red lines. A mechanical visor covered half his face, and metal tubes ran down his spine, humming with energy. This was no simple soldier. This was a hunter, a killer of royal bloodlines, a name spoken in fear across systems. Draken Voss, leader of the mercenary faction known as Scorch Talons, famous for hunting alien royalty for money. He stepped into the station like a predator entering a cage. His visor scanned Ethan from head to toe. A human, he said, almost amused. And not just any human, a Deathworlder soldier. Ethan raised the rifle. I'm not looking for a fight, but if you touch that girl, I will end you. Draken chuckled, a cold metallic sound. You misunderstand, human. I do not want the girl. He pointed a razor-edged gauntlet toward Lyra. I want what her death will bring. Ethan's blood ran cold. You kill her, and the queen breaks, Draken said. She will surrender her healing power to stop the grief, and the galaxy will pay me any price I name. Ethan stepped forward, rage burning like a rising sun. You're a monster, he said. Draken tilted his head. No, I am a businessman. Then he snapped his fingers, and every mercenary outside aimed their weapons at the station. The storm roared, the desert rumbled, and Ethan knew one thing for certain. This fight was only beginning.
The wind screamed through the broken walls of the maintenance station. Sand blew inside like sharp needles, covering the floor in a thin golden layer. Ethan stood between Lyra and the deadly hunter, Draken Voss. The mercenaries formed a half circle outside, their rifles glowing in the stormlight. Every weapon was aimed at the doorway, ready to fire the moment Draken ordered it. Lyra's breathing grew weaker. Her silver glow dimmed with every passing second. Ethan knew she couldn't survive much longer without help. He could see the pain in her eyes, feel the heat of her fever through the dusty air. He didn't have time for a long fight. He needed a way out. Now. Draken stepped deeper into the station, his metal boots scraping across the floor like claws. You are delaying the inevitable, human, he said. The girl dies, the queen breaks, and the galaxy bows to my employer. Ethan tightened his grip on the rifle. He had been in many battles before, but something about this moment felt heavier, darker. Lyra was not just a child. She was hope. Hope for her people. Hope for a dying world. Hope for a mother waiting for her last chance to survive. Ethan positioned himself slightly sideways,
shielding Lyra as much as he could. He asked calmly, "Why kill them? Why destroy the Thyrene?" Draken tilted his head, as if the answer was obvious. "Because healing cannot be controlled," he said. "Because life is expensive and sickness is profitable." Ethan's stomach twisted with disgust. Draken continued, "The Queen's healing power can restore entire planets. But if her daughter dies, she loses her heart, her will, her strength. She will surrender to keep her people alive, and the syndicates will own every cure in the galaxy." "So this is about money," Ethan said. Draken smiled behind his visor. "It is always about money." Before Ethan could respond, Draken raised his hand. "Kill the girl," he ordered calmly. "Bring me the human alive." The mercenaries fired at once, but Ethan moved instantly. He grabbed Lyra from the table and dove behind a fallen slab of metal as bullets tore through the walls. Sand exploded in violent bursts around them. The station shook under the impact of the shots. Ethan whispered to Lyra, "We're getting out of here. Stay awake." Lyra reached up weakly, gripping his shirt. "My mother, she is in the caves, far east, hidden from them." Ethan nodded, even though she could barely see him through the storm and dust. "I'll take you to her," he said. "I promise." He scanned the room quickly, searching for anything useful. His eyes landed on a broken generator in the corner, still faintly humming. Behind it was a narrow back hatch buried under sand. A way out. A chance. But only if he could reach it alive. Draken's voice echoed, "Human, you cannot hide forever. Every minute the girl lives is another minute her mother stays alive." Ethan felt his pulse rise with anger. He grabbed a metal pipe from the floor, tied his jacket around Lyra to protect her from sand, and crouched low. He whispered, "Hold tight." Then he sprinted across the room, bullets flashing past him like angry sparks. A shot grazed his arm, another hit the metal beside him, throwing sparks into his face. But he didn't stop. He tackled the back hatch with his shoulder, forcing it open as sand poured inside in a wave. Behind him, Draken shouted in frustration, "Stop him!" Ethan slid down into the narrow escape tunnel with Lyra held tightly against him. The tunnel was dark, cramped, and filled with drifting sand, but it led away from the station, away from Draken, and that was enough. Outside, the full power of the storm hit him. Wind roared like a beast, throwing sand in every direction. Ethan lowered himself behind a rocky ridge, shielding Lyra as best as he could. He squinted through the storm, trying to find the eastern direction Lyra had mentioned. "Which way?" he asked loudly. Lyra raised her trembling hand toward a distant line of black rocks, barely visible through the swirling dust. "Caves. Mother is there," she whispered. Her voice cracked. Her light dimmed even more. Ethan lifted her carefully and began moving across the storm-beaten dunes. Every step was a battle. Sand pulled at his legs. Wind shoved him sideways. But he kept going. Lyra depended on him. Her mother depended on her. And an entire species depended on them both. Behind him, he heard engines powering up again. The mercenaries were trying to chase him through the storm. Draken's metallic voice shouted orders over the comms. "Hunt him down! Find the human! Kill the girl!" Ethan pushed harder, refusing to slow down. He would not let a child die today. He would not let an innocent world burn because of greed. He would not let Draken win. He reached the first black rock formation and slid behind it, catching his breath. Lyra's eyes fluttered, opening only halfway. "Ethan," she whispered, "am I going to die?" Ethan shook his head firmly. "No," he said. "You're going to live. And you're going to see your mother again." Tears gathered in Lyra's eyes. "You don't even know me. Why help me?" Ethan looked out into the storm, watching shadows of mercenaries search the dunes. His voice was quiet but strong. "Because someone has to. And today, that someone is me." Thunder cracked across the sky. The storm grew even stronger, and Ethan began the desperate journey toward the hidden caves, with death closing in behind him.
The storm slammed across the desert like a living wall. Lightning flashed behind the thick clouds, casting short bursts of white light over the dunes. Ethan fought against the violent wind with Lyra held close to his chest. Every step burned through his legs. Every breath felt like swallowing sand. But he didn't stop. He couldn't stop. Behind him, the sound of hover bikes roared closer. Dozens of engines fought the storm, pushing toward him like metal beasts. Draken Voss led them, his armor glowing red through the swirling sand. The hunter's voice echoed through the comm channel, carried by the storm's howl. "Human, give up. You cannot outrun us." Ethan ignored him. He slipped between two jagged black rocks, shielding Lyra from the worst of the storm. Ahead, the canyon entrance looked like a dark mouth carved into the desert. Lyra had said her mother waited deep inside those caves. If he could reach them, they had a chance. Lyra shivered against him, her glow almost gone. Her pulse was faint, soft like a fading echo. "Please, hurry," she whispered, her voice breaking. Ethan held her tighter and whispered back, "I'm here. I won't let anything happen to you." He pushed deeper into the canyon. The wind softened slightly in the narrow path, but the mercenaries behind him didn't slow down. Their lights pierced through the sand, hunting him like wolves. Finally, Ethan reached a hidden bend in the canyon. Behind it was a dark cave entrance, half covered in hanging vines and sand. Lyra lifted a trembling hand and pointed. "Inside. Mother is inside." Ethan ran inside the darkness. The air grew cooler, quiet, almost peaceful. He carried Lyra through the twisting tunnels until they reached a large chamber glowing with soft blue light. At the center stood a tall woman with bright silver skin and glowing blue eyes, the Thyrene Queen. She knelt beside a stone pool, her breathing shallow, her body weak, but when she saw Lyra in Ethan's arms, tears filled her eyes instantly. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice soft like wind over water. "My child, you returned." Ethan gently placed Lyra into her mother's arms. The queen held her as if holding a piece of her own soul. Energy shimmered between them, a deep, ancient connection. Lyra's glow brightened slightly, but it was still fading. "She needs healing," Ethan said, breathing hard. The queen nodded with trembling hands. "But her wounds are deep, and my strength is nearly gone." Ethan looked directly into her eyes. "What can I do?" She touched the glowing pool beside her. "This place is the heart spring, the last source of healing energy on this moon. For it to awaken, a guardian must defend it until the ritual completes." Her voice grew faint. "If the mercenaries reach us before the ritual ends, both of us die." Ethan didn't hesitate. "What do I have to do?" The queen pointed toward the cave entrance. "Stand," she said. "Protect us." Ethan nodded. He grabbed a fallen spear-like weapon from the cave floor and turned toward the tunnel. The roar of engines echoed closer and closer. Draken was almost here. Ethan stepped into the entrance of the chamber, planting his feet firmly. The storm winds behind the mercenaries pushed sand into the cave like a living tide. Draken arrived first, stepping into the glow of the healing chamber. His armor glowed red through the swirling sand. The hunter's voice was low and hungry. "Move, human. The girl dies today." Ethan raised the spear. "No," he said, his voice steady. "She lives." Draken charged. The cave shook with the impact of their clash. Ethan blocked, ducked, and countered with desperate strength. Draken was faster, stronger, supported by mechanical power. But Ethan had something Draken didn't understand. He wasn't fighting for money. He was fighting for a child. Their weapons clashed again, sparks flying. Draken swung a heavy mechanical arm at Ethan's head. Ethan rolled beneath it and stabbed upward. The spear pierced armor plating, sending Draken stumbling back with a roar. The mercenaries tried to rush inside, but the fierce desert storm outside pushed against them, limiting their movement.
Ethan used that moment. He charged forward like a storm himself. He fought with everything he had learned on Earth, every instinct, every memory, every lesson carved into him through hardship and survival. He fought like a death worlder. One by one, the mercenaries fell, knocked unconscious or thrown back by Ethan's furious strikes. The storm howled behind them, sealing the cave entrance with falling sand. Only Draken remained, damaged but furious. He lunged with his last strength, roaring with rage. Ethan sidestepped, using Draken's force against him. With one final shove, he pushed Draken backwards into a collapsing section of the tunnel. The rocks fell in a thunderous crash, sealing Draken under stone and sand. Silence filled the cave. Only Ethan's heavy breathing echoed through the chamber. He turned back to the healing pool. The air shimmered with soft blue light. Lyra glowed brightly now, her mother pressing her forehead gently against her daughter's forehead, their energy blending into a powerful healing flow. Slowly, Lyra opened her eyes. Her silver skin gleamed again. She looked around until she saw Ethan. A small smile spread across her face. "You kept your promise," she whispered. The queen rose to her feet, her strength restored. She bowed to Ethan, a rare honor in Thyrene culture. "You saved my daughter, and by saving her, you saved our entire people." Ethan shook his head. "I only did what was right." The queen placed her hand gently on his arm. "No, human," she said softly. "You did more than right. You showed us hope." Lyra ran to him and hugged him tightly, her small arms wrapping around him with warm gratitude. "Thank you, Ethan. You are our protector." Ethan smiled faintly. He looked toward the tunnel where the storm settled outside. His journey here had been an accident, a twist of fate. But now he knew he would never be the same. As he stepped out of the cave, Lyra called after him. "Will you come back?" Ethan looked over his shoulder and nodded. "I will," he said. And the desert wind carried his promise far across the dunes. A human who stood alone against darkness. A protector who saved a world. A death worlder who became a legend.